Welcome to another episode of the Managing Happiness Show, where I interview successful entrepreneurs on how they manage to have a happy family life while dealing with the madness of entrepreneurship. Today's guest is Evan Gobdel. He's one of the founders of Woodlawn Partners, which is a small private equity firm based in Chicago. And they really get involved into building these companies that they acquire, not just owning these businesses. And Evan has been very helpful in shaping the Managing Happiness course and the ideas. He was like a great sounding board that I used a lot. Thank you very much for this. He had a really big impact on this. And I'm very happy to chat with you today on work-life integration and other fun stuff.
Yeah, thanks for springing the live element on me. This is added pressure and surprise. I like it.
Yeah, sorry for this. I could have sent you a heads up email, but
nah, that would have taken all the fun out of it.
So maybe we start out with you telling us why you guys started Woodlawn Partners, and maybe why you left your previous world, and why you do what you do.
Sure, and I'll be brief. This is definitely one of those questions that often elicits a really, really long wandering answer, but you touched on it in your last comments, the focus on truly building businesses versus just owning them is the distinction, and it manifests itself in almost everything we do and how we operate. If you're treating a business as a stream of cash flows, as an investment, as a blah 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 other financial abstract concept, you behave in a certain way. And much of the investment world is structured that way for good reason. I have no bones with how they do things. I think it's very clear, what they do, how they do it. I think people know the rules. We're all consenting adults.
It's all about shareholder value.
Yeah. Again, it's gloriously black and white. So you can, the nice thing is you should be able to figure it out, and then you can choose to join them or perhaps beat them. Fundamentally, my partner and I met now over a decade ago when we were both in that world, and we felt like there was just such a missed opportunity to follow through. There's so much activity around the investment side, the fundraising, the acquisition sourcing, as we tend to refer to it, and then the execution, and then it's kind of, oh, great, now we own this business, let's go find the next one. Or, bring in kind of a programmatic 100-day plan, or bring in an operating executive to do all that for you, or whatever. But the follow through was very often an afterthought. And we felt that was really, unfortunately, backwards, at least from what we wanted to do with our lives. We saw a tremendous opportunity for our personal learning and just sort of for shared learning of, wow, if we got into these organizations and tried to open them up and really, be a force to help them realize their potential. I don't know what's going to happen, but it sounds like it could be cool, was sort of the bet. And we've followed through with that. So we, and I in particular, have moved towards that side of the business. We've had a division of labor where Greg is more involved, typically on the front end, but we all overlap and try to divide and conquer. But again, the commonality is helping these businesses realize their full potential over an indefinite time horizon. And some companies, that means just facilitate a smooth ownership transition. These are not companies that are going to go public someday. They might be just a great regional business, but that deserves to continue to thrive and can create its own options once it finds stability under new management. Sometimes these are companies that are struggling to grow. They have demand from the market, and existing management raising their hand for a lifeline, wants support, needs help building not only a team, but the processes, bringing in the philosophy that will allow them to scale into the future. It's a wide variety, but it's that same view that these businesses are wonderful, complex organizations that often need help, need new resources, need new ideas. And so we try to serve that. And I think plenty of good comes to investors.
Even if you do something good.
Well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't view it as mutually exclusive at all.
Did you have like, was there a defining moment for you when you realized like, hey, I really want to change something in my life, or like something that really pissed you off in the investor world? Or, you know, like for me, it was like when you were there, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. It's like for me, the wake up moment, like, holy shit, I want to change something in my life, you know, do something that is, you know, not just following the American dream of amassing as
Yeah.
much stuff as possible, you know, like what was there a defining moment for you?
I think I think my wife would probably lodge the legitimate concern that my life is a series of those moments. I tend to be a fairly ornery dude, and I've never been one to just accept how things should be. I think in the most positive sense I could paint that, I think I'm pretty honest with myself. So I feel, you know, I know when things are working or when they're not, you know, from being the troublemaker in school, or finding my own path, or having the confidence to, you know, what I chose to major in, or, you know, job and career path decisions. I've had a pretty, I don't want to say confidence, but I've been pretty comfortable with discomfort. I've been pretty comfortable saying that, you know, nobody's going to die here. I know what mediocrity feels like, and that's really uncomfortable. So I'm okay kind of, you know, cooking from scratch and
trying out something new.
Yeah. So no, I did not and do not have grand vision. You know, what I'm trying to shape the world into, but I'm pretty good about when something doesn't feel right, I'll just kind of quietly walk in the other direction until I find something that's better, and then that's the next stepping stone. And so that's been, you know, trust me, we've had those moments as well of, you know, is this enough? I would not claim that this is, you know, the fullest expression of myself, is all encapsulated in what I do professionally, but boy, it's gotten better over the years as we've gotten closer to this. And now that this is something of our own making, yeah, feels pretty comfortable.
We both are, you know, huge mission, vision, values, I don't know, like setting a proper business foundation nerds. And you know,
I'd agree with that.
and you use EOS in with most of the businesses, or I don't know, maybe with all of the businesses that you invest in, that you purchase. Can you elaborate for the audience what EOS is and how it works? Just
sure. EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system. Their website is EOS Worldwide, I believe. And we don't use it formally, but it's a great backbone, because it's, I think, a very pure distillation of, I think, kind of, you know, almost business common sense, if that's not too strong. The focus is on focus and accountability. So the two fundamental exercises, I suppose, are setting quarterly values and having what they call as an accountability chart, rather than just an organization. Quarterly goals.
Yeah, because you said values. I was like, oh, changing the values
no,
every quarter.
No, daily values. No, quarterly objectives and an accountability chart, which is, you know, not just typical bubble diagram, but truly trying to drive down to having the right people in the right seats, and then what business results are they accountable for, and to whom are they directly accountable. So it's, you know, there are several other layers beyond that, but you get the idea with just having clearly defined objectives and then knowing exactly who is doing that. It's amazing how those two things alone can transform a business that has stalled, drifted, struggled, you know, been distracted by so much firefighting or growth or whatever that is. Just getting back to that core.
It's pretty phenomenal when I talk to businesses. I do quite some consulting or mentorship with businesses, and
Sure.
bringing these fundamentals up and kind of like checking in, like, do you have a mission? Do you have a vision? Do you have like what are your goals that you have set, etc.? What are your KPIs?
Yeah.
Like, it's really mind-boggling how many businesses have like none of this in place. And
relatively nobody. It is remarkable.
And all the businesses that you go into, have you ever found one that really had their act together?
Oh man, that's a super dangerous landmine kind of question.
We could skip it.
I will. No. These are fun, right? I would say we have not gone into a business where we have been shocked by how much they
had their act together,
had this focus. And I'm hesitating for a few reasons. And I'll be really vague, but I think this will be helpful. I think the common small business that we're getting involved with is, say, a $25 to $50 million revenue business. So these are not, massive companies. They are typically at the plateauing end of their entrepreneurial phase, whether it's still run by an owner operator or it's still, very closely linked to that. It's still a continuation of that. These have not been professionally, rigidly managed organizations. So the failure to have this in place, I don't view as a failure. I view it as sort of, just like I wouldn't criticize my 10-year-old for not having a formal resume in his back pocket at all times. Like, no.
Okay, it's a good analogy. I like that.
It's working, right? Like, don't mess with it. And so, that's important to us, that we're not coming in and saying, wow, you guys are really behind the curve and I can't believe you don't have that. Usually the conversation is, okay, well, where are we trying to go? And these kind of discussions, these tools, these kind of tangible exercises are necessary when a business is transitioning from everything in an entrepreneur or an entrepreneurial group's head to, okay, how do we synthesize that with a team of employees, perhaps not owners, or just changing of the guard? How do we hand over that knowledge and motivational force, whatever that is? When you translate, when you shift, you need to kind of write stuff down. And so usually businesses are ready for that. So in that regard, I'm not shocked that they don't have it. We're not even, concerned or dismayed, but, there's a reason why we tend to do this, is because it's really closely correlated with the stage of businesses that, we're often introduced to.
I mean, it's also good because you have the skill to implement EOS well into these businesses. So it's very easy to provide a lot of value and help these businesses to grow once you have acquired them, right? So it's like, kind of it's almost a good thing that they have come to where they've come without having this in place. So you can come in and very easily provide a lot of value and help them grow, right?
Oh yeah. As far as, no, that's all right. No idea.
Hi. You're live on Facebook.
Yeah. That was my mother-in-law, who's apparently coming over or made it. Yeah, to your last comment, we get a ton of cheap points and are humbled by that. It's back to the discipline idea. We're not coming in as the smartest guys in the room with this investment thesis of this is what we're going to do with your business, and just move over there and we'll program you like a robot. Trust me, I got this. We come in to facilitate these discussions, bring tools and resources, bring the value of our experience to say, what are we trying to do? What's realistic? Who's going to actually do it? What does this look like? And it's just bringing some of that outside objectivity to it. These concepts are rarely controversial. This is saying we should know what we're doing, we should know who's doing it, rarely starts a fist fight. So how you implement, how quickly you want to go, those can be contentious. And so that's what, we want to respond to the needs of the business, not come in with some preconceived, growth mandate. But again, as you said, having a set of tools that we can point to is very helpful. I believe that, these are appropriate tools for vast majority of businesses that we encounter. So, it makes life easy. If you're, we don't need to program everything from scratch just because, we've got something that, is a great way to start a conversation.
It's like I don't know if bias is not the right word. It's I'm not asking this question for me. I'm rather asking for the audience. But since you're so organized and structured in the business world, do you apply any of these business principles to your personal life and your family life? And by the way, maybe you give the audience an overview of what your family looks like.
Yeah, wife of 13 years, 10-year-old son, 8-year-old daughter, 5-year-old daughter, who just started school yesterday, hence the confusion with my mother-in-law of where is everybody, likely. I live in suburban Chicago, and I work from home. We actually did this math not so long ago because we realized we were never home this summer, and so we rolled it back to, geez, how often am I here? Do I travel too much? And realize I'm at one of our companies one night a week. So it doesn't work out to be that easy because most of them are a flight away. But I'm usually with our businesses, for a couple days, 3 weeks out of every month. Otherwise working from home because, we don't have a central hub.
So how many days per month? Per month?
The math was like 70 days a year that I'm at the companies. So that's 1 out of 5. But it never works. It doesn't work that way because it's not every week's not the same. But yeah, you get the idea.
Yeah, with travel, it's kind of adds up to some degree, right?
Well, and it's not that interesting, but yeah, it's usually several days and then weeks off, and it's never just as boring as, frankly, like a consulting. I'm not going to the same project, leaving Sunday night, coming back Thursday night. It's much more varied than that, which is, I think, a good thing for everyone.
Yeah. So sorry, I interrupted you in terms of how to.
No, you gave me the background question, which derailed the real question. Do I apply these principles?
Oh, which?
And again, yeah. I mean, the answer is a yes, and that's a yes as diplomatically as possible, which is usually not diplomatically enough. My kids don't call me on that, but my wife certainly does, often with like a raised eyebrow of like, stop treating us like this is a business. But it has been really important to me. I think, back to that idea of where I find a groove, that consistency of thought is really important to me. I don't know that I would be particularly happy or successful in any facet of my life if I didn't have that consistency. If I was a trader on the floor of a stock exchange and then came home and then was, thinking about group dynamics of, my wife and family or, whatever else in my personal life, I think I would struggle with that. And I don't know if that's good, good reference point for anybody other than myself, but I've found that pattern. And so I think a lot, other broader concepts, not so much EOS, but just broader concepts of group dynamics that I'm always hungry to learn from our organizations. I do try to bring home in a good sense. The process I do try to less gently apply to myself. And this is another, to your point of, wow, it's amazing how few companies do this. Not to be judgmental, but do a poll of how few people do this to themselves. And, if you really want to be freaked out and sort of depressed about humanity, think about how few people are sort of bouncing through life and what am I really doing? Well, my job's not that miserable. That is a constant reminder motivator, that life is quite short. And if I'm not doing what I want to be doing very deliberately, boy, I tend to feel like, I squandered time. I was sort of consuming empty calories and spinning wheels and maybe even sliding backwards. And God, that feeling is really uncomfortable for me. So thinking about, I am not a lunatic list maker, spreadsheet maker, but I tend to, my internal dialogue tends to swirl around a couple different axes that try to remind myself of, are you really doing something of value? Are you really doing something consistent with, what you think you're doing, or are you just kind of getting in your own way?
So kind of defining your personal mission and vision type of thing, kind of where the journey should go, like what's the right target type of thing.
Yeah. And down to on a daily basis, I am a big, morning ritual person. Not that it's rigid, and with young children, that would be a ridiculous fool's errand, but just knowing before I start acting, knowing why, know what my priorities are for that day. Reminding myself that it starts with, a clear head, and then typically, wife and children. And then at some point I need to go to work. And then within that, constant reminder. I think, one of the toughest things, certainly given what I do, is, having multiple businesses and a lot of different disjoint projects, is being thoughtful about where I can really benefit the most people, where I'm most needed, as opposed to, what's bothering me the most, or, what's the biggest fire that needs to be fought, or, what's the pebble in my shoe that I just need to shake out. I try to be really thoughtful about, what my real objectives are for each of the businesses, for each of our, my key relationships.
How do you make these decisions in terms of, because like it's always something that is on my mind, like how do you decide between what's important and what's urgent, and kind of like how do you do that, especially in your role of like being kind of detached from the day-to-day operations, and like, kind of just being more, I think like saying puppeteer is like the word that you will not like about.
That would be horrible. I would never say that. Yes. But I get what you're searching for. And frankly, that's a huge benefit. I don't have nonstop distractions in my face. I don't have, our business's customers don't call me with a crisis. They call the company with a crisis. So, so I have that benefit. I tend to have, what's racing in my head, which is much easier to calm than what's racing in everybody else's head and lighting up the phone lines. So mine is as simple as, just shut up, find quiet, know what quiet feels like, and then think about it and write it down. Because, doing this sort of thing in your head, I think, is sort of silly. That's what pen and paper is for. If you like to type stuff, go for it. But truly having that quiet time in my morning, and I mean like quiet room, closed eyes. Usually for me, it's with reference to, I do have a spreadsheet of, mapping longer term to-do list priorities to remind myself so I don't have to think fresh. And then also relationships. I think that's one that might be interesting to people. And this has been, the last couple of years, something I've realized that in my role, being thoughtful about managing relationships is often more important than, again, the business objectives that I'm not necessarily driving directly anyway. And so, I'll give you an example of that. I have on this spreadsheet, sort of who are most important to what we're trying to do, and then thoughts about, how I can help them be successful. Do they need me to check in, or do they need me to leave them alone? Did it seem like they were struggling about something, or, do they need, a pat on the back because they're running with something and it's going great? I try to just, again, no magic, no hidden agenda other than forcing myself to be thoughtful about it. And then it tends to come pretty easily. And I think, as you could imagine, like, you think about a friend, think about somebody you're working with. If you took 2 minutes to just think about how you could make them happier, more effective toward a identified shared goal, it ain't that tough. If you just start acting and, I have to call this guy about that, I act, I just start talking, I'll tell people what to do, I'll get off on a random brainstorm, I'm just a mess. if I haven't thought about,
Yeah,
what I'm
you think that
really
actually
trying to do here.
do you see yourself as like a coach to some degree, or sounding board, or like, because I guess what you don't want to do is like tell people what to do, or like kind of push people, right? You want to make them learn these things themselves, in family and also in business. But yeah, I don't
This
know.
this is, you and I have talked about this, and I might take this, maybe 2 to 5 degrees off center from where maybe you're going, but it's another topic that's I've had fun discussing with you. I try not to think of myself as anything other than as an aid to these businesses. So I worry that if you brand yourself as coach, you start playing this coaching role. If you branding yourself as the boss, you end up playing the role of the boss, often with weird unintended consequences. So I like to just think of myself as somebody that cares about a situation. And if I say, hey, here's what we've agreed as a group that we're trying to do. We know our objectives, and I know what those are. I know, where I may be involved or not. I know who's important to getting that done. And then truly on a daily basis, how can I help that? Yeah, sometimes it means coaching. And I've certainly had those conversations of, hey, I see you're struggling through this new transition. Would you like me to act as a coach? Should we have weekly meetings scheduled? Should I bring you ideas on this sort of thing?
Etc.
Yeah. Do you want me to be, a defined resource like that? And sometimes it's sometimes it's not really. Sometimes it's, hey, I need to be player coach. Sometimes it's, jump on the field, run an executive search, or build a website, do a whatever. I take those kind of projects on.
Like SWAT team as well.
Yeah, and then just try to be directly helpful. Try to be a good role model. Try to be a good influence.
How do you do that? How do you see this as with your role as a dad or a husband? Like, because in this regard it's different, because you don't ask like, hey, son, like,
yeah, they don't get to say
do you
no.
want me to be a coach? So how do you decide on that? And do you?
Hey, Alex, you're stuck with me. Oh man, it's the same thing, but it's harder. Honestly, why? Oh God, I'm getting really lazy in my speech, but you'll have to accept it and forgive me. Why do we all love the game of business? Because it's easy. It's tangible. There's clear feedback in terms of dollar cents and milestones.
It's like a sport.
It's a sport. It's totally a sport. So, and this is a little obnoxious, but for most entrepreneurs that have, and I'm not going to say made money, whatever, but anybody probably anybody listening to this podcast is probably either in a job where they're not hand to mouth, or paycheck to paycheck, or at least they may be now, but they have the confidence that they're a talented, employable person, and they won't be someday. This is probably different for a huge percentage of the globe that is dealing with more immediate challenges. But we're talking about entrepreneurs in the developed world with families. I think our challenge is often finding that tangible. We're spoiled with comfort, which can bring complacency. Or what do? We create games to play. I think business is a relatively benign one as long as it's not abused. So back to the idea, tiptoeing back from that really dicey topic. What do I do with my kids? I'm as bad as anybody at getting distracted by the tangible. And I will admit, mind wanders to business stuff more frequently than it should, but I try to bring the same discipline to, and that's the wake up every morning. Hey, dad first, frankly, husband slightly, close second, and then everything else way down the list. If you can start your day that way and then force yourself to end your day that way, I do okay. I tend to be really self-critical about my mood by the end of the day. And that's a good barometer for if I feel burned out and I'm distracted and crabby at the dinner table, I probably was doing something wrong. So, think about that. But back to that consistency idea, it's not that different. How I try to talk to my kids and be with them, not preach to them, but, sort of meet them where they are and truly just be with them. It's a lot easier for me when I can just be, kind of abstract and thoughtful about that, as opposed to being stuck in the dad role. Geez, what should I do? I'm the dad. I got to tell him something. Like, well, more likely than not, you're going to screw up if you're thinking and then talking and doing rather than just kind of shutting up and listening. It's a glorious cop-out as well. Be like, no, I'm just sitting here parenting. It's a lot easier than thinking you have to be the hero.
It's an interesting concept to just, I guess, just be there and not. It's actually really good. Similar thing that my parents said with me is just always be there as a tool if they need me, but other than that, just let me develop and grow and kind of make my mistakes and do my thing. It's interesting.
No, and for the record, I'm not claiming to be good at any of this. And the other thing, conversation with my wife this morning on, I think you're kind of too judgmental on the. Hey, we're sharing. This is only broadcast to the universe. In terms of like diet, I tend to be rather ascetic in how I eat, and often because I take a maybe overly practical view of food as nutrition, not entertainment, which allows me to not be distracted by it. Mm-hmm. That can mess up kids, as I try to be aware of, so that balance of, hey, I'm not eating ice cream after dinner every night. Am I telling you can't, or am I just sitting here? The gray is always a challenge, and I don't want to imply at all that I'm good at or comfortable with this approach, but it's kind of the best I got, and I'm sticking to it.
I mean, that we view this very different, in terms of like I tend to be a little more preachy and tend to be a little more coachy and pushy, etc. But like in this regard with kids, I think it's all about living as a role model and like kind of showing them that you are diligent, that you work hard, that you exercise, that you read books, that you continuously grow, and that you eat healthy food, and that it's important to you that you eat healthy food, and maybe like explain to them like why you're not eating ice cream, etc. And kind of still let them then figure it out, like why this is the right thing to do, right? And kind of what the side benefits are. I think that's the ultimate lesson or the ultimate idea of they will do what you do and not what you tell them to do, right? Especially when it comes to kids.
That's a bet. We'll see. But I will say, when you go to the ice cream parlor with somebody and you don't order the ice cream, you're kind of a dick. And I, I struggle with that one a lot. Or, when they do ask, or when it's, hey, it's breakfast, hey, can we have that? It's like, well, I'm not going to eat that, because like nobody wants to hear the public service announcement. And that's, just sitting there kind of silent, and being perceived as judgmental is really tough. And I, maybe if, apologies to Alex, my oldest, I think he's gotten better at this, of sometimes, understand. I think it's a humility about how much of the world I control. And, it's easy to get wrapped up in your house, in your head, in your family, and say, well, I can make these decisions that I feel very comfortable with, and I can live this way, and that's a good role model. And it's really hard to then say, well, how does that interact with the outside world? Because that's really what's important, right? I mean, just solving in the absolutes in a vacuum is super easy. We could all sit here and pontificate about the kind of great people we want to be, and then you walk outside and it all falls apart. And unfortunately, my kids will walk outside. Yeah, most of their lives, they are with other people. They are at school. And that, I mean, that's the challenge. I don't even pretend to have a great theory or good practices on. It's just trying to, kind of beat yourself up to shut up and be humble, that you don't, it can flip the other way really easily. I fear that, I can be, doing my own thing great, and you come across as judgmental or aloof or irrelevant. And so the kids say, well, geez, my dad's this, weirdo and he does his own thing. But like, I'm sitting here in the cafeteria with these kids and that dude's got a nutty bar that looks amazing. I'm going for that. And then, okay, wait a minute. What, have I really, helped my kid make a good nutritional decision, or have I just driven a wedge between my reality and his that's going to have far greater consequences than, the grams of sugar?
I think it's always, the tone makes the music and how you communicate these things. If you communicate them with love versus with fear of, in terms of fear that they make the wrong decisions type of thing, I think then they'll, I hope at least, this is how I deal with these issues with my daughter. And I'm like completely green behind my ears because my daughter is turning 4 soon. So I'm an absolute rookie beginner. But my philosophy for now is that, for example, eating meat, I'm vegan. My wife is like, say, mostly vegan, and my daughter eats meat, when she likes it. And we at home, like, she doesn't have the chance to eat it, but when we're somewhere else and she wants to eat meat,
sure,
I offer it, then she can get it. And when she asks me, I just like explain to her in a as non-judgmental way as I can why I'm not eating meat, why I think it's not a good idea, but she still can do it. And at least my hopes are that this is the way how I can bring my way of life, or like kind of what my values across to her. And but let's see how it goes. I'm curious.
Good luck, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have like a lot of other things that I want to talk to you about, because we've been chatting a lot about a lot of very interesting topics, but I also want to be mindful of your time and want to keep it within an hour. Maybe we'll talk about HoonToe a little bit, because you're fairly involved in this, and I think it's like an awesome organization, so we can give them some shout outs and some love. So maybe you can explain what HoonToe is, and then we'll get to the the book question that I always ask, and then we'll on today.
Perfect. No, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about and just plug the HoonToe Institute, which I think is the HoonToeInstitute.com, which is a leadership development organization. Such a cop out, but it is program. I suppose their kind of lead product service is a 9-month cohort of kind of a shared learning program, usually with 6 to 8 companies, that focuses on emotional intelligence in leadership primarily, but then also has some kind of business school kind of one-on-one tools through a classroom setting, has a peer kind of an advisory board concept, through the dedicated CEO coach, and a forum, which is a kind of a CEO closed door confidential peer group as well. That I'm not doing that justice, but hopefully that communicates kind of the vibe. It is targeted at companies that are in their growth stage, so usually a little earlier than we would get involved with a business at Woodlawn. These are typically $2 to $5 or $7 million annual revenue businesses, handful of employees, and I think the most telling characteristic is when you have a founding team that kind of wakes up and realizes, wow, we're not like just developing a product or just trying to sell stuff. We're not in kind of startup mania survival mode. We're a real business, and wow, we're really just faking this and kind of making it up as we go along. And there's probably more out there. So what do we do? And it's for, for companies that have the self-awareness and humility to say, we need help, but also the confidence to say, hey, we can grow, and the desire to grow, maybe feel some pain while growing, but say, I don't want to just sell the company. I'm not unable to continue this, but I need to grow so that the company can grow. So it's really sort of a parallel path of, some teaching for the business, some best practices for the business, but then a lot of, I won't even say coaching, but because it's so experiential, I think the biggest value comes from providing an environment for the leadership team to just be exposed to different things, be in a group of peers that are all going through the same things, and then a facilitated process where they're learning together.
From mentors that, I wish I would have had this, or I would have known about this in, when we grew Max CDN, because as a, when the business grows, you have to kind of grow with the business, like personally, because otherwise,
absolutely,
you have to be out, and it can be really painful. And I think we would have made a lot less mistakes than we would have. So if you're in the growth stage and you feel the pain, check out the HoonToe Institute. It's really cool, really good people. They have a Chicago chapter and a LA chapter, right?
Launch the first cohort in LA is coming together now. So we've been in Chicago for 5 years. And launching in LA. So happy to, you'll be able to find me directly, or you can find them. Would talk anyone's ear off that wants to listen. I'm a huge fan, and I've seen it. It's not, to your point, it's not, companies need to grow up. It's just the business has changed, the game has changed. You need to change. It's not, which is not admitting a deficiency. Obviously, the founders have been successful at the founder game, but for those who want to then also be good at the growth game, the scale game, whatever your goals are, again, that self-awareness and humility to say, I need some help to do that. And then it's amazing how to be around, and I participated in the forums, which is, kind of confidential CEO discussion groups, and just seeing the magic of, knowing you're not alone, knowing you're struggling with these things together, and then the progress of that through a 9-month period of seeing people learning and growing together is really cool. To start from that, hey, we all need it, to then we're all getting it, and then we're feeding off of each other and all getting better. It's always just sort of a super good vibe.
Yep. So again, check it out. The HoonToe Institute, really awesome, and will make you grow faster and save you a lot of headache and pain. To wrap this up, my favorite question: what are the books that had the biggest impact in your life, and what's the book that you're currently reading?
This is like my least favorite question. I've given you a hard time about this.
Because you also read 3 books at the same time, right?
I do that, and I'll have to think about what am I quote unquote reading right now. But I thought about this morning. Like, God, I should give you a good answer, and I'm gonna totally fail. But this is interesting to me, and I don't know. You can cut me off if you want to. But thinking about what influential means is a really broad topic. I do not have like 3 books that changed my life, and this is a great kind of illustration of who I am. I tend to read things in waves, and so maybe what I'm reading is a reflection of what I'm thinking. Maybe what I'm reading is then shaping what I'm thinking, but I'll tend to explore topics, and so it's hard for me to pinpoint one as like, oh my God, that was it. I think fundamentally I'm wired not to think that life is that simple and linear. So I like to think about, what's the most influential kind of topic I've been exposed to, and then say, oh, I read this 5 books about it.
Okay.
And no one is definitive. So, and I'm not going to give you 15 books. I think the last time this came up, I'll give you a couple, I think, interesting ones as it relates to parenting. The 2 that come to mind quickly are, and I should have looked at it before we got on. I think it's Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn.
Mm-hmm.
And another one is, I think it's conscious parenting. And there's a woman that came and spoke in my community, and I'm totally blanking on her name right now, but
that's fine. We'll put into the show notes. That's fine.
It's a wonderful thing. Both of those, I think, books I think about often, as we talked about parents very briefly. The first one is Turning Things Inside and Out to see how dangerous punishment and rewards as anti-punishment are, and how pervasive they are. And thinking about praise as a reward, then if you have multiple children, praising one kid, are you anti-praising the other kid? Oh my God, if you ever want to just blow your head up as a parent, that would be a great choice, because it just bludgeons that kind of argument to death, which, kind of the typical, so much of our world is punishment reward, how bad that can be if misused. So it's another one of these self-awareness ones. Just be very careful. And it was a good tool that sort of nailed that coffin for me, that I now catch myself more than I used to when I'm communicating with my kids. Man, I don't have. Let me go back to what I'm reading right now. And I'm reading a really cool collection of essays by Alan Watts. And I think it's called What's It Worth? And it's his essays on, it's probably right over there, but I'd have to take off my headphones to grab it. Man's relationship to the material world, from money symbolically versus what it represents, to food. Kind of, we're all little, I think the second essay is entitled Murderers in the Kitchen, sort of acknowledging that even if we're vegan, we're still killing plants, and maybe we just don't hear them scream. But, the world revolves around people consuming, things consuming other things, even down to the plant. So his view is kind of like, you can't, yeah, it's like you can't get away from it, so you have to kind of deal with it, which was just, kind of a fun mental exercise. Man, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to, because otherwise I'm going to give you 20 other books.
That's cool. We're going to put them into the show notes also at the hour mark. So this was awesome. Thank you very much for this. And thank you for being so flexible and jumping on the Facebook Live, even though it was, completely unprepared.
I'm glad that we haven't started a riot. I was worried that if all of a sudden, we stumbled into something that got people's attention and had us swarming us, I think that would be a bad thing. So yeah, hopefully some folks checked in and enjoyed. But yeah, at the very least, it's recorded for.
Yep, I'll put it on the podcast
forever.
In a few weeks. Forever and ever. Awesome, man. Thank you very much. We will talk soon, and have a good day.
All right, yeah. Have a good night. See you.